Hello, hello. Just getting the live started on Instagram as well. Yay, we're live. Excellent. Okay, let's do this. I want to start by describing a cycle that I've watched play out across actors at every level. And I want you to see if it sounds familiar to you. You sign with a rep, it's exciting, there's energy, you feel like something is finally about to shift for the first few weeks, or maybe even the first couple few months. There's communication, maybe an audition or two comes in, so it feels like there's momentum and you're like, "Okay, cool. Yes, we got this." And then it slows down. The auditions get less frequent or they stop completely. The communication gets quieter. You send an email and you don't get a response for a few days, and then it takes a couple of weeks, and then you stop hearing from them altogether until you reach out first. And in that silence, you start to tell yourself some stories. They don't care about me. I'm not a priority. Um, they're not pitching me. They're not doing their job. Good morning, Patty. Good to see you. So what happens? You leave. You sign with someone new, and then the cycle starts over. It's excitement at first, and then a feeling of momentum, and then silence, and then frustration, and then you leave. Some actors that I have worked with have been through this 3, 4, 5 times. By the time they get to me, they've quietly just kind of concluded that shitty reps are the problem, excuse my French, and that the industry is kind of stacked against them because there are all these reps who don't really have any power and they're not really getting them anywhere. And also that nobody is really going to fight for them the way that they need or the way that they deserve. And I want to gently suggest something that might be a little uncomfortable for you to hear. And that is that if you have had the same experience with multiple reps, at some point the question stops being, what's wrong with them? And starts being, what role am I playing in how these relationships go? Clip that. So today is about answering that question really honestly. And I want to be clear, this is not about blaming ourselves. Some reps genuinely are terrible. I will be the first to say that. Some partnerships genuinely are not a fit. But the actors who I've watched build genuinely great relationships with their reps are doing really specific things that most actors are not doing. And those things are learnable. So this is episode 18 of Powerhouse Conversations. How to build a relationship with your rep that actually works, or know when it's time to move on. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to address is how I think most actors kind of think about their rep relationships, because the mental model is usually kind of off. And if we're thinking about it the wrong way, we're doing the wrong behavior. So a lot of actors will think of their agent or their manager in one of two ways. Either they work for me, which creates this kind of weird entitlement and also frustration when things aren't happening fast enough. Or there's also like a version of like, they're my boss, or like I'm beneath them in some way, or I defer to them, which creates passivity and a fear of reaching out and communicating with them because you don't want to bother them, or it seems like you're overstepping when you do that. Both of those ways of thinking about it are broken. The model that actually works is partnership. You and your rep are on the same team. You're working toward the same goal. You're each bringing something different to the table. They bring relationships with casting offices, knowledge of the market, the ability to pitch and negotiate on your behalf. You bring your talent, your materials, your industry relationships, your strategic initiative, your willingness to be an active participant in your own career, all of that. And when both sides are showing up fully, the partnership produces results that neither side could produce alone. And when one side goes passive, the whole thing stalls out. It doesn't work. And here's the part that a lot of actors really don't want to hear. And that is that in the majority, not all, but in the majority of the rep relationships that are not working, the actor has gone passive. Not because they're lazy, but because no one's ever told them that their role in the partnership is active. They signed, they breathed a sigh of relief. I finally have an agent that's good, excellent. And then they waited. And waiting is the thing that kills rep relationships faster than anything else. Clip that. So I want to share something from an actor that I've worked with, one of my clients, because it illustrates this so well. She's with a great rep now. She described her old rep relationship as being afraid to reach out, afraid to bring opportunities to them, afraid to ask questions. She would talk herself out of texting her manager because she didn't want to be a burden to him. And so weeks would go by, no communication. And in that silence, the relationship just quietly died, So she ended up leaving that manager. And then she found a manager where the dynamic was completely different. She described it, and this is her words from a training that we have inside the table. She said, "We work as a team, as a cohesive unit. I can text him about anything. He's open and excited to communicate with me. I bring him opportunities and he doesn't feel like I'm stepping on his toes because he knows I might have information that he doesn't have." Right? Same actor, same talent, same market, completely different experience with a rep. And the biggest difference wasn't the manager, it was how she showed up in the relationship. So the first shift I want you to make today is just this. Stop thinking of your rep as someone who's supposed to do something for you. Start thinking of them as a partner that you're building something with. That one shift changes everything about how you communicate, how you contribute, and how the relationship feels for both of you. And I can tell you that when you have this stance, it feels completely different on the rep side too. So they treat you differently as well. Hi, Kareen. Hi, Jaime. Hi, Kareen. Tony. Great to see you. All right. So most rep relationships don't die from like some weird conflict or like a disagreement or something. They die from silence. Weeks go by without communication, then months. And in that silence, both sides start making assumptions. The actor assumes the rep just isn't working for them. And the rep assumes that the actor is just off doing whatever and they aren't that serious. And nobody says anything, and the gap widens. And eventually, someone moves on mentally, even though there's been no conversation about being dropped or about leaving the relationship. It just kind of dies. So here's a rule that I teach that is simple and that I'm telling you is so transformational. A couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks max, is the maximum amount of time that should go by without some form of communication between you and your rep. And yes, auditions count, but the communication should not only be about auditions. Let me say that again because it's important. Your communication with your rep should not be limited to, here's a self-tape and thanks for the audition. If that's the only time that you're in contact, you don't have a relationship. It's transactional. There's so many reasons to communicate with your rep that have nothing to do with auditions. You can send them a personal update on work that you're doing for your career. You can include them in your email newsletter that may go out quarterly. You can share a press mention or a piece of positive feedback that you received because, hello, they need to know that, right? For relationships that they're building on your behalf. You can engage with them on social media. You can send them a commission check with a thank you note. You can share news about a project you're working on. You can send them an article that you thought they'd find interesting. All of those things keep the relationship warm. All of them signal that you're active, engaged, thinking about your career, and all of them make your rep's job easier because they have more context about who you are and what you're doing. Clip that. Now, I know some of you haven't talked to your rep in a while, and the idea of reaching out feels kind of awkward because you don't do that. So, here's a way to like restart the communication. Just push that reset button on your communication. Here's how you do it. You send an email that says something like, "Hey, it's been a minute since we connected, and I'd love to set up a quick call or a meeting to catch up. I've been doing some strategic work on my career, and I want to make sure I'm giving you everything you need on my end. So, um, it'd be great to connect. And I'd also love to hear if there's anything I can do to make your job easier as we head into this next stretch, right? Like maybe you're reaching out before episodic season in the fall, whatever, right? That framing is honest and it's generous and it positions you as someone who is taking initiative. You're not blaming them for not having heard from them, but you're opening the door to a real conversation instead of a weird silence that both of you are pretending isn't happening. Clip that. I also want to just recommend something that I feel like has been a game changer in my relationships, and that is a strategy meeting, perhaps once a year, maybe even once a quarter. You sit down with your rep in person if possible. You talk about goals. Where's the career going? What kinds of roles are you targeting? What can you do on your end to support the team? What relationships are you building that they should know about? All those things. This is what high level actors do with their representation all the time. Do you think they're not having meetings face to face and setting strategy with their teams? Of course they are. So if the idea of doing that makes you think like, I don't know if they take that time for me, little old me, I want you to just notice that thought because that thought is not saying anything about them necessarily. It's really telling you something about how you see your own value in this partnership. And it might be time for a reset on that. I am here to tell you that you are absolutely worth their time. And really feeling that, really embodying that is going to be huge for your relationship with your reps. And one more thing about communication, you've got to keep your word, right? If your rep asks you for something, maybe they want updated headshots or they want new footage or they want, I was submitting for a play and my manager wanted me to add my entire reel to a casting profile instead of just clips. And I was like, okay, cool, got to do it, right? Get it to them promptly. If they want your availability for a date, what, you've got to be responsive if you expect them to be responsive. And if you can't, for some reason, tell them why. Give them a timeline, right? Don't just like go silent. Reps need to know that you're one of the actors on their roster who follows through. When I reach out to Asia Ray, she gets me what I need. Because a lot of actors on their roster do not. And the ones who do become the ones who get the most attention, of course. Not because the rep is like playing favorites or something, but because they know that when they invest time in submitting you, you're going to show up prepared and you're going to make them look good. So let's talk about the next kind of item, which is really bringing your like secret sauce to the table. This is something I think a lot of actors forget. Your rep has a roster full of actors, maybe 10, maybe 40, maybe 300. And every single one of those actors wants more auditions. Every single one thinks they should be getting submitted more. They should be getting pitched more. Every single one is competing really for your rep's time, energy, advocacy. So the question is, what makes you their number one client? What makes you the client they think of first for things? It's not just talent. It's not just bookability. It's how you make them feel about working with you. It's the human relationship underneath the professional one. I call this your secret sauce. And it's built on two things, really: letting them know you as a whole person and making gratitude or acknowledgement a habit. Your rep can't pitch what they don't know. They can't fight for you in a room if they don't have specific reasons why you're right for a role. And those reasons will often go beyond your physical characteristics, your headshot, your resume. Maybe you went to a specific university that makes you perfect for a character who went to that same school, or maybe you speak a language that's relevant to a project, or maybe you grew up in a region that gives you a specific dialect that's perfect, or maybe you have a life experience that connects you to a story in a way that nobody else on their roster does. They won't know any of that unless you communicate it to them. And the actors who have the best rep relationships are the ones who share enough of their whole selves that their reps can actually advocate for them with specificity. And now the acknowledgement piece. Listen, everyone likes to be seen. And reps are humans too. They like to know that their work is noticed and appreciated. And a lot of actors will never express that. Thank you, Will. I'm glad that resonates. So here are some simple practices, right? Know your rep's birthday and send a message. Congratulate them when another client on their roster has a big win. Notice when they go above and beyond for you and mention it specifically. Here's a good one. Be genuinely kind to their assistant because that person is often doing a huge amount of the submitting work for you. And a lot of actors will just kind of ignore them. If your rep gets you like an audition that's like a level up, a game changer for you, like maybe it's your first series regular audition or it's your first audition for a major studio film or something like that, send them a card. Not an email, like a card. Acknowledge the moment, share the excitement, let them know that you don't take it for granted, that you notice these things. These things might sound small, but they are not small at all. These are the things that make a rep think of you as a partner and a person instead of just another name on their roster. And when you're the client who makes them feel valued, you become the client they pick up the phone for. So here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. Does your rep actually have everything they need to do their job? Because some actors are frustrated that they're not getting submitted enough, but when I look at their situation, their rep doesn't have current materials. The headshots are like 6 years old. The reel has footage from student films that they don't even really want people to see. Casting profiles haven't been updated in 3 years. The rep is trying to sell someone with outdated tools. So before you blame somebody for not getting you into rooms, make sure the sales tools are sharp. Current headshots that match your essence. A reel that shows you at the level that you want to work at. Casting profiles that are up to date. This is your responsibility, not theirs. It's not their responsibility to say they need this from you. Now, here's the part that separates active partners from passive clients, and that is proactive pitching, right? The actors who have the best relationships don't just wait for their reps to get them work. They are also bringing opportunities to their rep. They're saying, so and so, I'll give you an example. One of my mentors is a director. He was directing a film and he wanted me to audition for it. So I brought it to my manager. You know, I am creating relationships outside of what my rep does. And so, of course, opportunities are coming directly to me as well. Right. And, a lot of people will think that this means like they get the breakdowns and they search the breakdowns. And when they see something that's right for them, they tell their agent or manager about it. Like, no, that's annoying. They can see that you match characteristics, right? You need to be bringing something to them that's a real opportunity. Or perhaps highlighting something about your background or about your training or your experience or your relationship with someone on the creative team. That would be a good reason, right? You can offer to self-tape and thank them. Thank them for pitching you for this opportunity. So here's what that could sound like, right? Hey, you've probably already seen this, but I want to flag the new, whatever the name of the project is. The lead character is a lawyer who went to an Ivy League school, and since I went to Harvard and I can handle legal jargon easily, I feel like I'd be a strong fit. I also know one of the executive producers, so you could mention that, and I'd love to put a self-tape together if you can get the sides for me. Thank you for everything that you do. So in that, I'm not telling my rep how to do their job. I am bringing intel that will be helpful to them. I'm giving them a reason to call. I'm making their pitch easier. And I'm showing that I'm an engaged partner who's paying attention to the market and I'm not just sitting at home waiting for them to send me auditions. So, yes, if you have a relationship with someone on the creative team, mention it. That gives your rep another angle. If a casting director on the project has called you in before, say so. If a friend of yours is connected to the production, say so. Multiple angles of connection are how roles get won. The other thing is that we really have to know our numbers. A lot of times we're operating out of some not really real sense of what's going on because we actually don't know what's going on. So we're operating on feelings rather than data. Okay? It feels like nothing is happening. It feels like you're not being submitted. It feels like every audition goes nowhere. Feelings are real, but they're not always accurate. And the way to find out what's actually happening is to look at the numbers. So I want to teach you 3 ratios that will give you more clarity about your career, and you can really kind of like look and understand what's happening. The first is your audition ratio. That's the number of auditions that you receive divided by the total number of submissions that your rep is making on your behalf times 100 to get a percentage, right? This tells you whether your materials and your positioning are working. If you're being submitted a lot but barely called in, the issue is not your rep's effort. They're submitting you. It's how you're being presented. It's something in your materials that's not converting or something in your positioning, right? Second is your callback ratio. That's the number of callbacks divided by your total number of auditions in that category times 100. That tells you whether your performance, either on self-tape or virtually or in the room, is landing. And if you're getting called in, but you're never getting called back, something about the audition itself needs attention. Maybe it's preparation, maybe it's craft, whatever it is, but that data points you to the actual problem instead of letting you blame your rep. The third is your booking ratio. No, booking divided by total auditions times 100. This is the big picture metric. And, I also want to say there's no like universal good number here. I was in a workshop with some commercial casting directors and 2 of them on the same team, and they totally disagreed about what a decent booking ratio is. It was actually pretty hilarious. Um, it depends on your market, it depends on your category, it depends on how competitive your type is. What matters is tracking it over time and trying to improve your own numbers. So really comparing yourself to yourself. When you know these numbers, the conversation with your rep changes completely. Instead of, I feel like nothing's happening, you can say, I noticed my audition ratio is about 3%, which feels kind of low. Can we look at whether my materials need updating or whether there are casting offices we should be targeting more intentionally? You know, I want to make sure that I am doing everything I can to make sure your submissions are landing. That is a strategic conversation between partners instead of just a complaint from a client who's frustrated and like sending blame somewhere else. Clip that. In episode 12 of Powerhouse Conversations, I covered how to request a submission report from your rep. So if you haven't done that, you can go back and watch that and learn how to get the data on submissions. Okay. So I spent a little while talking about how to build the relationship, how to be an active partner. And I just want to be clear that everything I just taught you should be tried first. Most actors will skip straight to, I think I need a new rep without doing any of that work. And that's why they keep having the same experience over and over. But Sometimes you do the work and it's still not right. Sometimes you implement my communication strategy, you bring your secret sauce, you give them great materials, you're proactive, you're strategic, the relationship still doesn't move. And when that happens, it's time to make a decision. And oftentimes we can delay that decision way, way, way too long. Okay. I want to tell you a story that one of my clients shared because it's one of the most important things I've ever heard about rep relationships. She stayed with a management company for a long time out of loyalty, right? She really liked them, but things weren't working. Things were not going out. Every time she set up a call, they'd give her this pep talk, right? Like, we believe in you. Things are slow. Things are about to pick up. Just hang in there. And she'd hang up feeling great and give it another month and then another and then another. So by the time she did leave and started meeting with new managers, she had a problem that she didn't anticipate. And that was that, you know, the people would ask, why haven't you worked in the last couple of years? And when she admitted that she was being loyal to her team, she got a response from one of the managers that kind of stopped her. He said, but you didn't work. You just let 6 months go by and did nothing. And that was like, ooh, gut punch, right? That is the cost of misplaced loyalty. The new managers didn't see a loyal actor. They saw someone who wasn't managing their career like a business. And she told me, I will never let that happen again. So the framework that I recommend is yes, do the work. Implement the 5 things that I told you about today. The partnership reframe, the communication cure, the secret sauce, the sales tools, and knowing your numbers. Give the relationship 6 months. Real, genuine, active 6 months where you are showing up fully. And then reassess honestly. Has anything changed? And not talking about feelings here. We're talking about evidence, right? Because you know what numbers to look at. Are you being submitted more? Are you getting called in? Has the communication improved? Is the strategic conversation happening? If the answer is yes, stay and keep building, right? There's no sense in jumping to another person and starting this whole thing over. But if the answer is no, after 6 months of genuine effort on your part, it's time to move on. And not out of resentment at all, but out of clarity. Because staying in a partnership that is not producing results, out of loyalty or fear that you won't find anything else, or just this weird kind of unfounded hope that someday it's going to get better, that's really expensive for you. It's a very expensive thing for you to do as an actor. No business would keep a vendor who wasn't delivering their product for a year. This is a business. We have to treat it like one. But I want to emphasize this one more time. Most actors never get to this step having actually done the first 5 things, right? So make sure that happens. Now, everything I just walked you through, the communication framework, the acknowledgement practices, the proactive pitching, the numbers, the evaluation framework, you can start implementing all of that this week. And inside the table, we go much deeper with all of this. We build out your communication plan with your rep. We audit your materials to make sure that your rep has the tools they need. We pull submission reports and interpret the data together. We role play the conversations that feel hard to initiate. This is one of my favorite things to do. And for actors who are looking for representation, the table also includes Agent Alchemy, which is my 44-day guided system for finding aligned reps through genuine relationship building. Okay, so whether you're trying to build a better relationship with the rep you have or find the right rep in the first place, this is where that work happens with coaching, accountability, and a community of actors who are also ambitious and doing the same things you are. So the link is in the YouTube description. All right, so I want to open it up for questions. And while those are coming in, here's what I want to leave you with. Your rep is not responsible for your career. they're a partner in it. And the quality of that partnership depends on both of you. If the relationship isn't where you want it to be, before you start looking elsewhere, just ask yourself honestly, have I been an active partner? Have I been really holding up my end of the bargain? Have I been giving them the tools they need? Have I shown up as someone they'd want to fight for? And if the answer to those questions is no, you have some work to do before you make a decision. And that work will either transform the relationship that you're in or give you the clarity and the confidence to find the right one. So this week, do one thing. Maybe it's reaching out to your rep, not to ask for anything, but to contribute something, right? A win, an update, a thank you, a strategy question. And if you don't have a rep yet, do the same thing with someone in your circle of influence who could eventually become like a professional relationship for you. The skill is the same. Generous, consistent, proactive communication. So you can start practicing that now. All right. So Canada says, thinking about headshots, do you have any advice on how to take the best ones and how to choose? I actually have a whole blog article on headshots. If you go to actingresourceguru.com/blog and search headshots, that's a whole different topic that we can get into. So I would check that out. Nadia says, I'm new to acting and my package and acting websites are updated. Yay. However, I haven't been booking recently. So Nadia, for you, I would look at those 3 numbers that I talked about, those 3 kind of ratios, those 3 percentages, and identify what's the reason, or how can we look a little bit more specifically at what that lack of bookings really means. Is it pointing to a materials problem at the front end, or is it pointing to a craft or audition or self-tape issue on the back end? And then we can more accurately diagnose that. All right. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Much love to you.